I don't see a live thing. Maybe not turn on right now because it's too distracting in the background. If you want, though.
Can you see the live on there?
No.
It's right there.
Well, I'm live. All right, that's the delay. Thanks, bud. Yeah. You're going to have a tough time getting out of there. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another, drum roll, please, Jim Baird Adventure Live Chat. How do you hit the music? A holiday season live chat. Way to go, Huddy. Good dancing, bud. Today, we are going to be talking about my story a little bit. It's going to get a little bit personal. I still want to talk about some of the challenges that I face getting into YouTube, my passion with the outdoors, where that comes from, and I want to share some inspiration, hopefully, that will help you get outside as well. And teach you some outdoor tips or skills or whatever you might be looking for, because we're going to do a big Q&A as well. So very excited. I have about an hour. Usually these things are supposed to be an hour, but they go longer anyways. Huddy, perfect there, buddy. Huddy's playing Christmas music in the background. And first of all, right, buddy. First of all, I'm just going to enjoy one of my very own Windbound Campfire Pilsner by Muskoka Brewery. This is just an awesome beer. Anybody who's hasn't tried it, give it a shot if you can get the chance. You can pick it up at Muskoka Brewery's Tap House in Bracebridge, Ontario, or you can pick it up at the LCBO in Ontario, Canada, as part of Muskoka Brewery's Survival Pack. It's a mixer pack with a bunch of other delicious beers, and it's even in some local other areas. Huddy, what do you have to say?
Hi, good night.
That's nice of you, Huddy. Huddy's a really boring kid. So calm and just goes to bed so early every night. It's like, it's just too easy, really. Huddy, can you go up with Mommy? Mommy, you do.
Don't press anything.
So anyways, yeah, welcome everybody. Sorry, just take a bit at the beginning to kind of get people. Wait till a few people jump on, and it looks like, yeah, we got a few people on here. So without further ado, thank you for joining me tonight. And yeah, I'm going to just kind of talk about how I sort of became a YouTuber. I think where this starts is, okay, you can jump over there and get Huddy. Tori's got to walk past the camera because she has to wrangle Hudson, because he's like, this is all rigged up to a computer and he's like in there pressing buttons. So yeah, essentially, what do you want to be when you grow up? They ask you when you go to school. What do you want to be when you grow up? I don't know. I wanted to be a baseball player, a hockey player, right? Those kind of things, probably a fireman at a certain point, those things that kids want to be. And, being a YouTuber or, YouTube filmmaker in the way that this works now wasn't really a possibility, wasn't really on. wasn't really on my radar.
Oh.
Huddy, go get mommy.
Heavy upstairs now. I'm gonna count to 3 and you're coming upstairs. 1.
One.
No.
Go get mommy. Go
I'm
on.
gonna read the jungle book with Wesley without you.
Oh, that's too bad, buddy. That's too
Well,
bad.
go. I want to see the snow shack everywhere.
Okay, well, you have to go look at it up there. All right, round of applause for Hudson. So yeah, essentially, it's something that you have to sort of. Oh, somebody just sent me a picture of them drinking a Windbound and eating a nice steak dinner while camping. Anyways, yeah, so it's something that it kind of had to evolve into it because it didn't even exist when I was younger. And, my background definitely revolved around the outdoors because my dad and my grandfather built a cottage totally off grid, totally water access back in the 60s, back when, the Ontario government was selling lots of crown land and they could buy it for like $500, you know, and this is before I was born. So they built the place in '68, and my grandpa had one of those old 10-horse Johnsons. He took out there in a steel boat. My dad used to paddle out at night every weekend with loads of lumber, and they worked on it and they built that place. Thanks, bud. And so that was a place that eventually got power, and as I grew up, we were on CBs and no phone, and everywhere you had to get to was by boat. And so, that just forces you to be able to deal with some discomfort or some things people might think are scary because you're getting up there late, you're taking a boat across a lake at night in the dark, oftentimes. And it can be cold and it can be a lot of work to lug bags up the hill and all that kind of stuff, getting in and out of the car and out of the boat. And sometimes it's raining. You have to deal with that. And then everywhere you go is by boat or canoe. So this is an area that had a lot of backcountry. And I don't really know exactly what the definition of backcountry is, but to me, backcountry is when you get a backcountry lake, let's say, is when you get into a lake that doesn't have road access to it. So if you have a large lake, but there's a boat launch on that lake, you're not really in the backcountry until you portage on a trail away from that lake and into another lake that has no road access. Then that's kind of what I consider backcountry. But there are some big lakes that have one road access point, and you can be in a very remote location on that lake, and that could be more remote than some areas further south that are called backcountry. So it's a fairly loose term, but we got into fishing when we were younger, and unfortunately my grandfather, who's also named Jim, he died before I was born. I was named after him, but yeah, not very long. I think my mom was maybe like 3 months pregnant with me, 3 or 4 months pregnant at the time, and oh, thank you. And he passed. And so he was really into fishing. And so at our cottage, there was fishing stuff all over the place. My dad wasn't really into fishing. He liked to eat fish. He took me out fishing, of course, when I was a kid and that. But I think I surpassed him in fishing ability by, the tender age of 4. Just kidding. My uncle Steve took us out and got us interested in it, taught us how to clean fish and all that kind of stuff. But we really had to kind of be self-taught. Took a lot longer to learn things back in these pre-internet days than it does now. You can learn things. I talked to a pro dog sled musher, and he said that what used to take you 18 years to learn something, you can now get good at in like 3 years because of just the access to information everywhere. which is really good. Actually, it's really encouraging because at the same time, when you start something right off the hop, you're always going to suck at it and just be prepared, and that's okay. But it's encouraging to know that you can get better faster, usually now than ever. Thanks, bud. So, anyways, my grandfather and my dad built this place, and we got yes. Okay, Hudson just gave me a couple coins.
No,
A
this is
penny.
on me. This is on
Oh, that's a penny. Yeah.
yeah,
And this
is
one has
on me.
people skating on it. Thanks, bud. Oh, mom's calling you. Hey, Huddy, can you just let me do my talk down here for a bit? Okay, thanks, bud. So anyways, yeah, so essentially that meant that there's a lot of backcountry lakes in this area. So my family would always go on hikes into these lakes. We'd find a boat stashed there. We'd fish in these lakes. And my uncle was in the army, and he would always bust out these topographic maps and a compass. And I kind of wonder if he ever really learned how to use a compass, because we always were seeming to get lost. So he just have it. He knew that we weren't going to get lost. He knew if he walked straight enough in one direction, we get to a road or a hydro slash or a lake shore or something like that. And so what he basically taught me is that if you do if it is dark and you're not exactly sure where you are in the woods at night, that if you have to miss dinner and sleep in the woods, really that's not something to freak out about, and it's not anything more than a relatively minor discomfort. And so that's kind of um what I sort of learned from doing these bush whacks with my uncle, who unfortunately passed not too long ago. And and then so essentially my brother and my cousin and I, my two cousins and me and my brother, the four of us would go up there all the time. And this was before you needed a boating license. And we all learned to drive boats at a very young age. We all learned how to paddle at a very young age. All you learned how to swim at a very young age. And before too long, we were able to go trek just on our own into backcountry lakes or other spots on the lake and fish and catch fish and cook our fish up over a fire, and harvest other wild edibles and camp out there for days at a time. And so we are sort of we got to be a lot more free than kids do nowadays, I would say, on average. And I remember watching some old family footage of my cousin Brad driving a 10 horse in like an aluminum Lund, and my brother is on a kneeboard, standing up on the kneeboard behind the boat, and my cousin Brad is like doing donuts and like driving the boat like right past the dock, like really close, and my brother's on the kneeboard flying past the dock, and my parents and they're like, yeah, like cheering him on, like this was awesome. And I remember them watching it recently and being almost like embarrassed, like, well, at the time that was perfectly legal. There was no boating licenses. And I guess now that would be frowned on, but at the time that was what other kids on the lake were doing that age. And that was we were like surprised they didn't let us do more. We were like, you're so paranoid. We're fine. We can do these things. And we could. So that kind of just gave me the confidence in the outdoors. Got a lot of people asking, like, how did you get into this? And I just remember always having that kind of base core confidence, that as I had friends that got into like canoe tripping, I remember food barrels came out. And I remember not knowing what a food barrel was at first. I'm like, do you carry water in that? Like, why would you carry water in that? Like, what the heck is it? Oh, it's for just food. And okay, yeah, that makes sense. And I remember there's a few things I didn't know, but I was always knew that I could really learn those things really quickly because of that sort of like core base of what I know. And then before I started really wanting to make this kind of like a job or find a way to make money or a career out of being a canoeist and an outdoorsman, I should say that I think it was actually Cliff Jacobson, who's a great author. I've his book Expedition Canoeing was sort of like a textbook for me, planning a lot of my first big multi-week fly-in remote northern trips. And I think one of the things he said was, liking to camp is genetic. And he, And I actually looked into that a little bit, and there's a specific gene that 1 in 10 people possess, and it's called the explorer's gene. And people that have this gene in general are more likely to take risks than people that aren't. And I don't know if there's certain areas in the world where there's a higher percentage of people that has the explorer's gene or not. But all I know is that ever since I was a little kid, I always wanted to be further north than where people were. I always wanted to go like further and be in an area so remote. And I always remember thinking like our cottage, oh, it's remote, and then realizing, oh no, there's not. There's a crown land area here, but then there's more towns here, and how far do I need to go? And then starting to look at maps and being like, where can I be, away from everything and just be in this like remote area. So for some reason, and maybe it's just this genetic thing, this explorer gene or something, and maybe all humans, and maybe that's the reason why people have peopled the world, because enough of us have that drive to go somewhere and explore something else. It could be that gene. It could be just potentially being like an ADD case, which I think I am. And people that actually, they say people with ADD, I've heard them compared to certain bees in the hive, and certain bees act differently in the hive, and they're the ones that go seek out new areas for the hive to move to when they need to find a new location, when when resources in the area where their hive is get depleted. There's certain bees that are essentially explorer bees that go out and look for places, report back to the hive, and then the whole hive will move. The whole colony of bees will move to another place. And I think there was always certain people like that. Maybe 1 out of 10 has the explorer gene. 1 out of 5 people is neurodivergent. Maybe those people were the people that were kind of the people that would go out and explore. Oftentimes, people that were killed by rival tribes, even, but would explore, would make connections, would look for places with new, more abundant resources that would report back and be a key factor in deciding where that tribe would move to once they've sort of uh, used up more resources in the area they were, or whatever the situation might be. So these are some of the factors that, and you might be wondering this about yourselves. I imagine a lot of people that are on this chat right now also are explorers in a sense, right? And like to get out there and have some of these same feelings. And you have all probably been asked, why do you do this? What is it about it? And it's hard to answer why, isn't it? It is. And I think maybe some of these things I'm talking about explain that there is just some sort of genetic component, because you were like born this way, and it's not necessary. It's like it's nature more so than nurture, potentially. But let me know if you can relate to what I'm talking about in the comments right now. But anyways, so essentially, as I got older, I started wanting to. I always had this vision where I actually thought I wanted to raft a remote river, and this is like getting into my your mid-teens, we'll call it. I want to raft this like remote river. And of course, I grew up canoeing, and I love the like nostalgia of the canoe, that was like this First Nations vessel and was traditional, and that really spoke to me for sure. And of course, it made a lot more sense to explore the area where I live as well. And so as I got older, I started really doing some pretty hardcore treks right into in the area my family property was. Like remember one time I bought an inflatable dinghy, and I paddled to the dam, and then portaged the dam and paddled down this river, portaged into another river, paddled across the river, bushwhacked on a compass bearing 3.5 kilometers with a dinghy in my backpack. Got to this remote lake, which you're supposed to have lake trout in it. It was beautiful beyond my wildest imagination. Trolled the lake in a dinghy, caught lake trout, slept under a tarp, saw wolf the next morning, like, had all these like wicked experiences. And then I started, because I learned how to use a compass, and got into that. And then I started, exploring outside. So I started to go to Algonquin Park, Tomogamy, Killarney, and sort of learning about these areas. And that's sort of where my first trips started drawing me to, and just that excitement, that sense of adventure. And then I started looking at going online and looking at more canoe trips, and all of a sudden, the Nahani came onto my radar. And at this point, I was about 23 years old, and it was 2005, and the Nahani was like that river that I remember, that vision of, at the time, back when I was a mid to early teen, of this wonderment of exploring a river in a raft. And I thought the Nahani, of course, now I do it in canoes. And even before that, a friend of mine was doing doing a course, like a travel course or something like that, at Humber College in Southern Ontario, or some college, and his teacher actually ran guided trips. So he offered this guided trip to his students for a fraction of the price, which at the time I think was like $3,500, which was a lot of money. I wasn't in school; I was working. But we were in our early 20s, I think, before I did the Nahani or anything. And so, anyways, I remember going there, and we took this dugout boat up the Tamalpais River into the Amazon rainforest, and we stayed at this remote kind of lodge, which was just an elevated platform with like thatched leaf roofs, and there's monkeys outside, and it was awesome. We did these hikes with like indigenous people who would tell us like 5 ways to get high off of multiple, you know, tree bark and bofo frogs or tree sap, and how to make ayahuasca, and like all within the first 10 steps of a walk into the jungle, like all these experiences. And I remember one of the people, this was more of an eco tour than an adventure tour. Um, we saw all these wild things, but I remember one of the guys who's a guide. There's this cool guy. I'd look way back into the mountains, and he's like, "You see where the mountains? You go into there, and you take a raft, and you come down the river." And he's explaining this to me, like, with this like, and he's explaining this rafting trip through these distant mountains, and how it's logistically challenging, and how there's white water, and how there's jaguars once you get. I'm just like, that's what I want to be doing. And when I say that's what I want to be doing, like, wow, talk about privilege to even have that as an option. But it wasn't just that's what I wanted to be doing, as in people that age want to go and travel Europe and they want to see the world. For me, it was like, that's what I want to be doing with my life, and it was kind of all coming together. And so eventually I started planning the Nahani, and I started reading Paddle Your Own Canoe by Joni and Gary McGuffin. And I started reading some of Bill Mason's books, and I started reading Kevin Callan's books I'd already gotten into at this point, and done some of his roots a little closer to home. And I knew these people were that were authors, and that spoke at trade shows and stuff like this. And during that time, I ended up getting a job with my family business, which was a traveling sales job and a commission sales job. And I was able to take time off to do these trips, work a lot of hours, and then take time off. Unfortunately, that business didn't work out for my parents, although it did for a while, and provided me with an awesome childhood for a good stretch there. But I would be servicing a chain of bookstores in the States, taking orders. and they were all these outdoor magazines were there, and so I already would read Ontario Outdoors, Outdoor Canada, Canoe and Kayak, and all whatever outdoor magazines I could get my hands on, and so I'd buy them, and as I was on the road, I'd literally read magazine after magazine, cover to cover, Field and Stream, and all these things. And I decided I at first when I got into this, I wanted to like write magazine articles and be a photographer. Unfortunately, I was already behind the times at that point, because that was already kind of going out of the main thing, because digital stuff was coming in. Like a fraction of freelance writers are actually full time and all that kind of stuff. And I quickly realized, after finally getting one article published, how hard that is and how little you get paid, that this would be an enormous challenge to try to make money doing it. So I was still trying to piece things together, but I'd always been raised to be told that, everyone's going to tell you you can't do it. And, everyone's going to tell you it's impossible. Everyone's going to tell you it's not practical, or that can't be done, or that's not realistic. And believe me, I had close family members that told me that's just not realistic, like what you're trying to do is not realistic. Anyways, I did the Nahani. It cost us about $3,500 each, or 3,000 each, which was like peanuts compared to what it would be now. And I got this feeling after I did it. People would be like, well, it's a once in a lifetime trip, or you got to do it while you're young, well, you can still do things like that. And I just remember thinking, like, no, like, this is somehow not going to be a once in a lifetime trip for me. But here I'm wanting to do these larger than life rivers that are something that like retired doctors do. And I'm in my like early, and those are the easy ones. Then these even more challenging, extended, long ones that are like back-breaking trips through Labrador. I want to do all these trips. How do you make that work? And I slowly started like piecing this together. So eventually, after the Nahani, I went and did the Moisey, which was much less expensive, but way more hardcore in the realm of whitewater. And then after I did that, we did the Stikine River, upper and lower Stikine River in northern BC. And we did that, northern BC and Alaska. And we staged a trip out of the Yukon. And then the year after that, my brother and I did the Kujua on Victoria Island in the Arctic archipelago. That cost me and Ted $7,000 each. I was literally just slapping all this money on my credit card at this point. And I ran up $30,000 in credit card debt doing all these trips, buying gear. I was like an addict for this stuff. Every spare bit of time, I was bombing spring whitewaters, in the bush, bushwhacking. I was winter camping. I was like, people were like, there's more. My mom's like, honey, there's more to life. It's getting a little weird, because I was like so into it and learning as much as I could. And that's like exact words and how she sounded. And yeah, and what I realized in hindsight is I worked during this time and I could fund these trips. But what I did is I ran up this credit card debt. And that was essentially like my student loan. Okay. And so I did the Nahani, I did the Moji, I learned all these trips. And finally on the Kujua, on the last one, I got sponsors. They gave me they gave us these like $1,800 dry suits and a bunch of other sponsorship gear. And then I wrote a full feature article on that. And I remember getting this in this magazine called Kanawha at the time. And I remember opening this magazine and looking at all my photos and looking at my articles and just, this is it. Something about this is what I have to find a way to do. Anyways, my working with my parents' business was a challenge. I ended up, having my own place and not being able to do those big trips, those big expensive trips to the same extent, and with two other bills and stuff like that. And I eventually, yeah. So, but I eventually, what was I going to say? Yeah, I ended up not being able to do as many of them, but I somehow ended up working in mineral exploration because my family business didn't work out. Just like, they just, oh, honey, can you please stop doing that? I started working in the bush in mineral exploration. And a buddy of mine's like, he saw these bush skills I have. He asked me a ton of times. He ran the business, it was his family business. He asked me a ton of times if I want to join in. I kept saying no. And finally he's just like, Jim, he's like, you're gonna come in. And I really needed work. I knew this would be good. I knew they do things in a very low impact way. And he's like, Jim, we're gonna bring you over to the dark side of the force. Because he knew that I was like this nature boy and that I was using my love of nature to like promote conservation. And now he's bringing me over to like strip mine it, which of course he really wasn't. But I did that, and I'd be in the bush for 2-3 weeks at a time in the middle of the winter. Often it was hard work, man. Diamond drilling, exploration work, all this kind of stuff. But then I'd get off that trip, and then I'd be on one of my expeditions. So I'd go up there. I couldn't spend a whole bunch of money while he's in the bush for work. I'd turn around and I'd have 3 weeks I could do this expedition. So I ended up, before that, I cold called Field and Stream magazine when I was in New York City, and I was actually found my way into the editor in chief's office at 2 Park Avenue, New York. And I think that's kind of what launched my career. I'd written a bunch of articles before that. I just finished the Cuju up on Victoria Island with my brother. Had these crazy pictures of a pack of wolves following us and just wild images and a really cool story about this thing. And I wrote it, and I had it on a disc, like a CD-ROM. You remember those, and a printed story. And I went in there, and I somehow talked my way past security. They let me upstairs. Then there was like a gatekeeper on this, on the floor that sort of was like, triaging all the different magazines that were owned by the same corporation on that floor. I got past them. I eventually I just had a really good line, Jim Baird. I'm an adventurer in the far north, and I ended up talking to the editor in chief. Still was in. It was after hours. His secretary came out, and she said, well, just give it to me. I'll give it to him. No, I'd like to meet with him. Well, he's busy. You can wait here. And I waited. Sure enough, I'm at 2 Park Avenue, 5th floor, New York, sitting across the desk from the editor in chief at Field and Stream magazine. And I handed him this portfolio, or I handed him this envelope with a bunch of crazy pictures of freaking wolves following me and crazy rapids and insane scenery and muskox and giant Arctic char and lake trout. And he's just like, holy crap, who is this guy? And I told him at this time, I put some thought into trying to get like a TV show. And my brother and I had tried filming some things very poorly, I might add. And I told the editor that, I had some filming experience. Well, at the time, the magazine industry was really looking for people to put out digital content. He's like, we're looking for digital stuff. We're looking for people to do adventures and film it. I remember thinking like, oh, okay, there's something here, but also being like, oh, like I want to write print articles. Little did I know this digital side of things it was the future and would be actually way bigger and ultimately more along the lines of my passion is creating these films. So Field and Stream sent me on these wild expeditions. I snowmobiled, across Great Bear Lake and through the Arctic Barren Grounds, across the Northwest Passage to Uluhakto. I got back. They told me it was the most expensive thing they've ever funded in 120 years. Then I did the Cannell Trail and ATV expedition. That turned out there's such a massive amount of footage. And to be honest, some of the stuff I filmed probably wasn't that great too. I did a lot of vlogging though, and photos were good, and written stuff was good. And I think they just had so much footage. Like, what do we do? Who's going to process this? The money to edit this is enormous. And then I did another canoe trip across northern Quebec and Labrador that they didn't even run, that I ended up a few years later publishing with Canoe and Kayak and selling it to them. So yeah, I started. Field and Stream fired me. I was also trying to work another job at the time, and they're like, "Yeah, this is crazy. It's too expensive. This is a gong show. It doesn't work." So I would work at mineral exploration. Go then. I filmed a trip, edited it myself or paid someone else to edit, turned around and sold it back to Field and Stream. And they're like, wow, this is turnkey. We don't have to handle this internally. They would run it on their Facebook page. And I eventually quit mineral exploration to just go out and shoot, write some articles and shoot like more or less how-to videos in some of these remote places for Field and Stream. I did some stuff for Men's Journal. I did a lot of stuff for Canoe and Kayak, and I get tourism boards to fund some of these trips. So like I did the East Natashquan, and Tourism Quebec paid for me to fly way up in and get dropped off on a remote lake by the Labrador border and do like a 2-week canoe trip all the way back down. And my buddy at the time was importing these like cool Japanese vehicles, and I got like a Mitsubishi Delica or Delica to take out there and promoted him because my car probably would have broken if I tried to drive it that far. And I managed to piece all these things together and do these larger than life trips and actually make some money out of it. But I was literally living below the poverty line at this point. I remember doing my taxes and realizing, or doing my, everything, and realize I made $19,000 that year. And then I still had to pay like $2,500 in taxes. And I remember being like, I thought like taxes in some point, some part were supposed to like help the poor. Like, are you just going to give this back to me? Because I'm like literally poor here and still paying these taxes. But I remember from that trip specifically, and there was other ones like that, the porcupine we did. And, then once I started with Tori, once me and Tori started going together, I was still like struggling like that, but she like really believed in me. She thought it was really cool. And she was like one of the only people who was like, yeah, this guy's going to freaking do it. He's going to pull it off. So I owe her so much for taking that risk. Literally, I had an ex-girlfriend who dumped me because, my family business didn't work out, and that went out of business. And she just didn't, it was too weird that I was doing this canoeing thing, and I was going to be like Bill Mason or whatever. And I wanted to be like, and I just didn't think she thought that was realistic. And so, yeah, so essentially, I was doing that for a while. I rolled home from this big trip up in northern Quebec, literally rolled home with no gas in the tank and no money. And I went to the mailbox and I opened, no idea how I'm going to pay my bills. And I opened the mailbox and a check was in there from a sponsor who I forgot owed me money. Like literally felt like an act of God, like it was that tight sometimes. I'd have to borrow like, $200 off of my mom the odd time, and, just random things like that. As I went, and I remember I got a call from, I think it was called Warm Springs Productions at the time. Wow. Thank you so much for that. Robert, awesome, man. Appreciate the donation there. I remember at the time, Warm Springs Productions called me, and they were at the time they were casting for a show called Mountain Men that hadn't been out yet. And at the time, Marty, at the time I was working with Field and Stream magazine. So this is going back a little bit. Marty Martirayo or whatever his name was, I forget. He was on the front cover of Field and Stream magazine as this like Alaskan trapper. And so they were reaching out to I guess Marty, and reaching out to other people that had been freelancing to some extent for Field and Stream, real people looking for people to cast on the show Mountain Men before its first season. And at the time I was living in Toronto, and I just remember saying, like, I'm not like really a mountain man. I do these hardcore trips, but like you're looking for somebody who's got more of a day-to-day life that's more like, mountain manny. I don't live in the mountains. I live in like Ontario. Like there's no real mountains here. And I'm like, but you know who you want to try? You want to try this guy Eustace I think I pronounce it Eustache or Eustache Conway or Conroy. My dad had read me and my brother's stories about this guy Eustace and about how he was raised, how he lived in a teepee, and how his mom was saying, "Aren't you worried your kids are going to get bit by snakes?" And how she'd be like, "Well, don't you think I taught them about which snakes are poisonous and which they aren't?" And my dad just loved this story because that was sort of like his philosophy. My dad was, the kind of guy, some of my first memories of my dad was him chopping down trees and carrying giant logs over his shoulder to build dock cribs and build cabins and all this kind of stuff. My dad never really told me, "Oh, you got to be tough, you got to do this, you got to push on, and you got to stop crying about the bugs." Or he just did it, and I just like he just led by example. So I'm like, guess that's what we do, right? And anyways, so he sort of believed in that philosophy and thought this guy Eustace was pretty cool. Well, Warm Springs Productions listened to me, turned around, called Eustace, and the guy has been on the show for, and like every single freaking season of the show, and made the show an incredible hit. I'm so glad I recommend. I probably should have got like a finder's fee for that, but I don't think the production companies are too interested in bringing that up. But so eventually, what goes around comes around. Eventually, I actually the show Alone came out, and I hadn't really thought about like just survival, but I'd always practiced wilderness survival skills to some extent, and always read up on them. They always fascinated me, but I'm not going out there to see if I could survive with nothing. I had a few times and realized it's hard. Like one time I spent a weekend. We thought there'd be a boat in this remote lake, and there wasn't. And so we had to fish from shore. And one of our fishing lines got snagged, and it was like only freaking 15 feet long. And we were eating like wild mushrooms and like ate a bullfrog and caught like 3 fish, and we're freaking starving by the time we got back, right? So I have had some sort of experience like that, but somebody said this thing Alone got on my radar. So I was already full time on Alone, but like, working in mineral exploration, that kind of dried up uh, on its own. And I took the chance to go full time into freelancing essentially. Like I didn't really even have social media at this point. And so yeah, and I just decided to kind of go for it. And I remember, some of those early mornings, -20, my boots didn't dry out the night before, I got frostbite in my toe. And I'm going out, it's 5 in the morning, hardly on any sleep, driving to the site from a small cabin we were staying in that has, no, just off grid. And with some interesting characters along the way. And just remember being like, I gotta find something else to do. I gotta take that risk and just do everything. I never had any formal education. I had a grade 12 education, never did grade 13, which was here at the time. And so I did go to Humber School of Comedy in Toronto and took comedy, but I never graduated. I got kicked out of comedy school essentially, which I'm not proud of. So I did some like stand up and stuff like that in my past, but no real education. So yeah, so essentially, so one of my followers was like, "Jim, you got to try out for this Alone show thing. Look, here's the casting thing." I'm like, "Yeah, you know what? I should give this a show." Well, I'd actually pitched a TV show, and somebody, who eventually became a friend of mine, used a bunch of the footage I'd shot. I'd shot all this footage for magazines. Field and Stream sent me, my brother, and two buddies across northern Quebec and Labrador, 36 days living off the land. I freaking crossed the Angava Peninsula solo, the only person on record for a self-propelled winter trek across Arctic Quebec, the only person to ever do that. Like I had some freaking stuff under my belt at this point, and a lot of pretty crazy footage, not as well shot as I'm just like, didn't use tripods back then hardly. Like it was very shaky, but I had some cool freaking footage. And I had a professional editor who's like, I'll edit it for free as a sizzle reel to try to pitch a show. Well, we never really got too far with the show. Probably should have given ourselves more time, but whatever. But I had that in my back pocket, And I said, okay, I'm going to give the pitching this thing alone a shot, right? So instead of just finding the email and emailing it because they're getting like 10,000 applicants, what I did was I actually found out who the casting went online, did some digging, found out what the casting agency was called, who the production agency, sorry, was called. And then I found out who does casting. I remember I called there and I'm like, I'm Jim Baird. I'm this crazy adventure dude. I do all these things and I want to talk to the casting director. They couldn't give out that name. They said, you have to have a name. I could tell they wanted to pass me off. So they kind of said, look up the casting director's name, call me back, ask for a name, and I'll put you through. So I did that and she put me through and nobody answered. And then I did that again and she put me through and nobody answered. I call back again and I call back 10 minutes later. Finally, she answered her phone. And I said, I'm Jim Baird. I do these expeditions. I'm interested in this alone show. I just sent you an email with a sizzle reel of me and my brother doing these like hardcore survival things. We were like cooking fish on sticks, like spit roasting geese that we'd like caught, like bombing crazy rapids, bleeding, black flies. Everything was amazing, right? It was like great footage for alone, exactly what they wanted to see, and it showed that we were half decent at filming too, right? So essentially she's like, okay, well, I'll find it on my email. I'm like, are you in front of your computer right now? She's like, yeah. I'm like, hold on, I'm going to send it to you again. So I sent it to her and boop, it popped up right in her email while I had it on the phone, her on the phone. So what a way to get on her radar. Otherwise, I probably would have been buried. Also, she's looking, then she watches this thing. She's like, oh my God, this is amazing. And she has me on the phone. What a better way to sell yourself than that, right? And actually, at this point, I had not done the Ungava Peninsula trip. I'd done other winter things, but not the Ungava Peninsula. After that call, I ended up doing my solo trip across the Ungava Peninsula. Before I went, they were sort of being wishy-washy on like they were sort of just like, yeah, we want to sign you guys, but we don't know if it's going to be for a loan or not. So we are like, what? Like, we want to do up a loan. We don't want to sign a contract where you just slap us in anything. And so I never ended up signing. I did the trip. I still was like, a loan would be cool. I knew it would be a gong show and really hard. Like, so I wasn't like super fast to jump at it because I knew I was going to push myself and I knew there'd be suffering involved. And when I got back, I was like, yeah, I don't want to do it. I don't want to be alone again, just alone for 36 days in the wilderness, in the Arctic. And a little time went by, and Ted's like, come on, Jim, you know, you're always talking to me and all these crazy trips. Let me talk you into this one. I said, you know what, Ted, you're right. I called back. They're like, all right, you guys are basically come to the boot camp. And we were in. So, and then, of course, we went on a loan. 75 days later, we won. And at this time, me and Tori were really serious. I really wanted to take that next step in my life. I really wanted to win the money. You know, I wanted the experience. What, like, I don't want to say it was just about the money, but like, yeah, that had a lot to do with it. I was freaking poor and I really wanted to get married, start a family, and have some money to essentially reinvest a bit in a business that I could be more in control of rather than selling to magazines and buy a house and all this. So we stuck it out. And every night when things started getting hard, I looked at a picture of my wife, Tori. And because you're allowed to bring one picture, you're actually allowed to bring a double-sided picture. I didn't bring a double picture. I think I might even have it here. Hold on a sec. So there it is. So that is the picture of Tori, my then girlfriend at the time. And what she's holding up is basically a little souvenir store carved keychain pendant, I believe, that my brother and I found in the tundra north of Cambridge Bay, Nunavut, before we flew out to paddle the Kujua River, which is where we were followed by the pack of wolves, and the story that got me my gig with Field and Stream. And on that pendant, there's a frog whittled in, coastal BC indigenous art, probably Tlingit. And the frog is synonymous with good luck. And on the back, it said the spirit of good luck. Well, Ted and I found that out on the tundra, and then we almost died on the Beaufort Sea. It caught in a storm beside towering cliffs where we couldn't take out, and we were dealing with these monster waves, but we lived. So we thought maybe the spirit of good luck helped us. And so um, Ted gave that to me before I did Ungava, and I lived. So I couldn't bring that trinket on the show alone. You're not allowed to bring stuff like that. So I just got Tori to hold up the frog with the spirit of good luck in the picture. And every day I looked at that picture and I just imagined her saying, "You can do it. It's going to be okay. It'll be over before you know it. Don't get discouraged. You're doing good." And I just imagined her saying these positive things to me. And of course, we ended up winning, which was awesome. And then after winning, I actually had some money where I didn't have to like sell my content before I did it. Right. So before, I'd be like, I'm going to go do a trip. I have to ask Field and Stream or Canoe and Kayak if they will then buy the content from my trip after I finish shooting it and editing it. And then when they said, yes, we're in, then I could get the tourism boards and I can get other sponsors to come in and have something. But then that footage had to go to Field and Stream. Well, now that I had a bit of money, I hung out with a character you've seen me do some trips with before, my self-reliant Sean James. We met up with him. His channel had taken off. I really didn't know that you could really make a good living, or in some cases, a lot of money from YouTube. And we started talking. He was interested in doing with us. And this is right here at my now house, which Tori and I bought the same year Wesley was born. So I spent, a chunk of that alone money on this house, and Sean was nice enough to share a little bit on, the kind of money he'd made off YouTube. And yes, okay, this is something that's really viable. And so I said, I'm going to go for it. And I remember I wasn't even monetized. At this point, this is 2 years after winning a loan. And I still trying to do the freelance stuff, kind of eating through my money. The freelance stuff is still not really taking off, even though I'd won a loan. And easier, but not taking off. And so I decided to go all in on YouTube, and I wasn't monetized. So for some reason, I kept reapplying to monetize my channel. That's where you get a percentage of the ad revenue. And I kept getting denied again and again. And I started putting in large amounts of time. Me, Ted, and Sean went and did this trip with my dog Buck in Algonquin Park, this hardcore trip. Ted caught this just absolutely whale size speckled trout that's like still a legend in the park, folklore. And Ted's video blew up. It was like his first video. He like his video, he didn't even have a channel yet, and he started and put that, but his video blew up. I wasn't even monetized, and Ted just like started, and I'm like, oh my god, this is crazy. I'm putting on all this time. I remember my wife being pissed at me, like, just like freaking give up with this. Like, how much time are you going to put into it? That you're not getting monetized. I keep deleting. I had some like videos that I downloaded from Field and Stream's website with permission, but somehow that was looking like I'd stolen it. And I think that's what it was in the end. So I couldn't monetize my channel. So I kept deleting things, retrying, putting all this time in. Finally, I got monetized. And I was, oh my God, what a struggle. I still wasn't making hardly anything off of it. And then I decided I'm going to go solo a river in the Yukon, and I'm going to bite the bullet, and I'm going to edit this whole freaking thing myself. I'm going to do this myself. In the past, I didn't want to do editing. I knew it was going to be hard. I hate learning software. I'm not good with computers. I like the creative side of it, but all the other side was a lot. And I've been through a lot trying to learn already with editing the stuff for Field and Stream and the freelance stuff, but most of it I paid editors. So I kind of knew how to make it work and what I would want here, there, and the next spot from my experience, but I didn't really know how to use editing software. I said, I'm going to bite the bullet. I'm just going to do this. And I did. And, at this point, I still had some money in the bank from winning a loan. So I didn't have to take the risk where if nobody watched my YouTube except for my mom, you're the best, honey, you know, that I would be out of house and home because in the past, that was what was up. I would be out of house home if I didn't sell this content before I did my trip. Well, I went out there and I soloed the most challenging whitewater river in the Yukon Territory, at least the most consistent whitewater river. And maybe the most fun. The Bonnet Plume might actually be harder, but the Hess is what I did, and it had bigger standing waves. And I went out there and I flew into myself. Gorgeous freaking scenery, snow-capped mountains, glaciers, just like raging whitewater torrent, like so many fun, amazing things happened on the trip. And I captured them all really well, edited it. And sure enough, that took off. And that was the start to my channel. And right around that time, the magazine industry took a dive. So I've been pretty freaking lucky. And essentially then I just went all in on YouTube, and I started actually making a little bit more, getting more subscribers, getting out there and realizing, wow, this is viable. Not making very much at first, and it still goes up and down. Like a past pandemic, I was doing well, wow, I'm doing great, and all of a sudden, like, the over the last year, I'm like, oh my god, this like I'm not getting as many views. Like, there's always a bit of an emotional roller coaster, but I think just sticking it out, innovating, trying to change things a little bit, believing in yourself, not giving up, all these things are super important. But it was like literally like my family business went under, and at the same time I managed to find a job in mineral exploration that still let me work many hours and then take time off, and then mineral exploration, and then get into freelancing for magazine. Then mineral exploration dried up, I couldn't get work. Then right at the same time I built up my freelance business. I went full time at that, which was insane grind, man. A sales man. I've learned how to be a sales guy. Like, you gotta pick up the phone and call and try to find ways that you can create value for people, right? And then when the magazines went out the door, I got onto a loan, and then YouTube, essentially. So I've been doing YouTube for 6 years now. And so, yeah, and that's what I've been doing to support my family and everything ever since, and just slowly building that. And so that is the story, not the ultra long version, but a fairly long version. And that is the story of how I got into the outdoors and how I became a professional YouTuber. I hope everybody enjoyed that story. I can hear you all clapping from the other side of the internet. But we still have a bit more time. I don't have, oh, wow, I've been blabbing for an hour. I definitely would love to open it up to Q&A. If you guys have questions about what I did, anything I just talked about, or just like anything outdoors related, now's the time to ask those questions. I'm going to pull this screen over because the questions come in to this screen. So wow, that's quite the story, Jim. Pursuit of adventure. Thank you very much for listening to the whole thing. I appreciate that. You remind me of my cousin Tony. He was a Gemini. I'm an Aquarius. Uh, would love to see Huddy on the live cast, please. Oh, you missed him. He was in here and he kept running back down and like playing this like Christmas carol thing in the background. It's like some Christmas ornament that like blasts Christmas carols. And Tori had to come drag him out of here. But yeah, maybe I'll get him on next time. Loved it. Could have listened all night. Thank you very much, Judy. Fantastic, Jim. You're a legend. Thanks very much, Rob. Really appreciate it. What's your next big adventure? So I'd say the next big adventure is I'm going to Labrador. I just went moose hunting in Newfoundland with my friend Jamie, who I call the Rambo of Labrador. He was in the Canadian Armed Forces. He served in Afghanistan. He was a SAR-tech in Alberta. And he just grew up like in the bush in Labrador. He's basically migratory person, lives within 3 different off-grid cabins. Guys moose hunt. I'm going to go up to see him. We're going to maybe meet up with William Larkin, who also won another season of Alone, who's Jamie's friend who lives in Labrador, do like a huge snowmobile tour, stay in trappers' cabins, fish for giant trout. And my friend Jamie is also a Labrador fishing guide. We fish for trout and we hunt some ptarmigan and freaking live off the land, camp out, the whole nine. That's probably my next big one. But next year, I'm going to be doing a solo canoe trip in the Yukon. I'm going to be doing a solo canoe trip in the Northwest Territories. My family and I are going to go paddle like a 2-week canoe trip here. We're going to our cabin. Then I'm doing another crazy trip in a very remote area I'm traveling outside of Canada. I won't give away too much of that yet. And then, something else. So that 2026 is going to be even bigger than 2025 was, believe it or not. Okay, so what's your advice for a college-age person that wants to do huge expeditions like you have? Any career advice or something you would have done differently? It's hard. It's hindsight is very much 2020. Excalibur 88. Good question. I think the best thing is if you can dream it, if you can believe in yourself that you can do it, you can do it. And it's also, you'll hear a lot of people say, well, you can do it, you can follow your dreams, but you're never going to make a red cent doing it. And so a lot of people give up because, well, I could do it, but I would never make any money, so I'm going to do something else. You can make money doing it. You know what I mean? That, like, it's if you can believe it, you can do it. But you have to be able. My ultimate advice to you would be learn how to sell. Learn how to sell, learn how to talk to people on the phone. Everyone hates rejection. Nobody likes picking up the phone. It makes you feel uncomfortable to go into the meeting, to have the guts to walk into the freaking, 2 Park Avenue across the desk from Field and Stream magazine. You have to have the background and the skill and something, a portfolio of photos of you being followed by a pack of wolves and almost dying on the Beaufort Sea. Yeah, that sure helps. You got to know what you're doing. But yeah, learn how to sell and try to find a job that gives you time off. A lot of those jobs are actually really challenging, but like a firefighter, you can do that, or working in mineral exploration where you're 3 weeks on, 3 weeks off, or, a commissioned salesperson, these kind of things. Even people get into, you can, if you work in a hospital as a nurse, you can work long hours and then take time off. So try to find a job or a career that gives you that flexibility. So yeah, that's my advice to you. Sending love to the family from Havelock. Merry Christmas. Hey, Shelly, I used to drive through Havelock on Highway 7 and then Madoc and up 62 to my family's cottage all the time. I actually have family friends in Havelock. Okay, we got who would win in a backcountry cooking competition, you or Ted? Ted's actually come a long way when it comes to cooking, but it wasn't a long time ago where this guy would burn cereal. So like he's gotten really good at cooking fish, but I remember like I used to be the guy that like cooked up the fish for the family, and everybody like, Jim, this is amazing, this is so good. And then my cousin Brad like tried cooking up beer batter fish. He's like, this is easy. Like he was mad at me, like, how have you been getting all this credit for so long when this is easy? So then my brother tries it and he's like got these bass he caught, like, and he left the fillets on like the rug in the trunk of his like Forerunner or his vehicle, like like without the skin on, and they're like already rotten in the sun. And then he like mixes way too much water and he's like panicking and like stressed out, and they're just like horrible. So like he didn't have the knack for it, but yeah, I'd say you guys are pretty darn good cook now, and definitely good at cooking stuff around the campfire. But I'm still gonna go with me, hands down. Jim, how has your hand healed up from the infamous accident? You know what? My son Hudson just came up today and hit me in the hand with a carrot pretty hard, but it just hit in a weird spot that's still injured from that accident. I was like, ow! And it like hurt really bad. And Tori's like, whoa, Mr. Dramatic, and like thought I was just faking it. So like it's still there. I can't give the middle finger with this, with it. Like you see, I can go like this with this hand. I can't do it with this hand. I can only do it like in the American movies, like pop the bird. And when I go like this finger is still a little bit lower. I can't get it perfectly straight. But you know what? Overall, I don't really even notice it. So, uh, nice, super cool. Thank you. You're welcome, Matt. North Bay, Rouen, and Montreal, sitting by a fire, listening to you. A plus, right on. I used to work up in Rouen and Val d'Or, doing a lot of my mineral exploration stuff. Do Parquet, that whole area. Been all through the bush back there, man. We ride in on sleds until we couldn't get any further. These old tundras that didn't have reverse. We'd strap on the snowshoes, beat Matt all the way back into the country, man. I'd see wolves, moose, you name it. It was really cool. I miss Huddy when you go solo, Elizabeth. Absolutely. I miss Huddy when I go solo too. A lot. And the rest of the fam too. Yeah, I guess, I'd like to do more trips. Actually, I got an awesome video. Me and Huddy did a little dad son adventure to close down our camp for the winter, and a lot of interesting stuff happened along the way. So stay tuned. Have you seen or heard any Bigfoot? I don't think Bigfoot is real. Although one time when I was hiking from Virginia Falls and the Nahanni back to a canyon and waterfall behind there, where compass bearing walked, I passed like 3 prints like this, like they look like prints, and one looked like a human print, but there's kind of like a root growing through it. So I don't think it really was, but almost we were like laughing because, oh my, these look like Bigfoot prints. And I took a photo of it, and the photo turned out blurry. So that was in 2005. So there's my Bigfoot experience. So that's Nahanni River, Northwest Territories. What was your fave trip in 2025? We know what ours was, but we're a bit biased. Spectacular Northwest Territories. Before I read Spectacular Northwest Territories, I was going to say the Natla Keel. What an absolutely phenomenal adventure. And guys, I just did the Grand Canyon. What could be more amazing than the Grand Canyon? But there's something about particularly the Natla, just the rapids, the challenge, the snow in the mountains, the tight canyons, the smell of that fresh mountain air that's a little bit crisp still in late June. The fishing, the giant bull trout I'm pulling out of just a little backheady that's running out my spool, like, oh, unbelievable. Of course, the Mackenzie and the human history there. All these elements, just unbelievable. Thanks for asking me that. But yeah, hands down, Natla Keel, Mackenzie River was my favorite trip of the year. That's in Canada's Northwest Territories. I facilitated that trip out of Norman Wells. A lot of good trips you can do in the Mackenzie Mountains out of there. Hopefully, I'm going back next year too. Jim, how often do you use the drone to help scouting downriver around bends, curves you can't see around? Drone seems like a great time saver in this regard. Um, Paul W. I get that question a lot, and I probably should use it more, but the problem is I only have so much battery power, and I'm like, especially if you get a few days where it's overcast, you are starving for battery power, and I need to use my drone to get like cinematic shots that tie the story together. So if I'm just using it to scout around the corner, I'm not really going to be able to use it for the shots I need. Also, the other thing is that especially when you're, solo in a remote area in a loaded tripping canoe, um, if you scout to see if there's something, say, around a blind corner with the drone, and you go around the corner and there's nothing there, the drone has done you well. But if there is a rapid there, you still need to go down and scout the rapid with your eye. Just scouting on this little screen from a drone, an intense rapid, a class 2 even, or a class 3, where you don't know which way to go. Looking down from the top can also be very deceiving. It can make a rapid look a lot easier, like scouting from a bridge, anything that's higher up too. So you still have to go down there and check it out. And then a lot of the time, I remember when I was on Keel Creek trying to get to the Hess River, you're so bushed in. There's like literally nowhere you can take off and land a drone either. So in theory, yes, but a lot of the time it's not as practical or as realistic to use it as you would think. But in other situations that aren't like rapid, like we used it when I did that, when me and my buddy Nate and Max and Xander did that trek on that really warm winter across Tamogami. We actually used it to put it up and scout ice conditions. Oh, there's a bunch of channels in the river here. Which channel should we take? Put the drone up. Boom. This one's sketchy. This one's good. Go there. Absolutely helpful, but not really as like awesome as you would think at every turn. That's the best answer I could give. Let's see. Oh yeah, cool. Somebody's just asking me. Me and my brother bumped into a guy who's a follower of mine up when we did the spring trout fishing trip up north of my camp this year. Yeah, I'm probably gonna head back in there next spring and maybe this winter too. Um, Jim, would you collaborate with Mav from YouTube? Teach him to canoe safely, and he's really good fisherman. So I think you guys would have bond over. Yeah, that would be cool. I haven't watched a ton of Mav stuff, and I'm like, why don't I know more about this guy? This guy's like, he's got so many subscribers. He's always pumping out interesting content. Like, yeah, he's crushing it, and he's a great outdoorsman. So absolutely, but I should reach out to him. Drone scouting is great, but the problem is battery life. Someone's saying, yeah, that's a good way to put it. Um, burn cereal, Judy's saying to my brother. Yeah. Um, have you seen or heard Bigfoot? I kind of answered that already, but no, I haven't. Take care of your health. Absolutely. Actually, I was hitting a lot of doing a lot of working out, hitting the gym a lot, and I blew out my shoulder and blew out my knee. Fortunately, my trips kept me in shape though. Can you go over your filming strategy and how you decide what B-roll footage to shoot? I shoot a lot of stuff. Um, you know, I think part of the issue when you're shooting B-roll is you always think it has to be good. And so I remember sitting there with a really good editor and my camera shots like this, like it's like because I'm like, oh, sucks. This shot isn't very good over here. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It just hold the camera there for 5 seconds at least in a bunch of spots that are half decent. You might not think it's good at the time, but when that's edited together nicely to cover an interview or something like that, it's going to be good. And I think the key thing that you got to think of is the story you're trying to tell out there when you're filming an actual real trip that's truly unscripted is always evolving in front of you. So you have to be able to shoot things around you that are going to essentially tell that story. Is the current strong? Get a shot of the current. Is it windy out? Get a shot of those leaves blowing in the trees. Get a shot of your map case flying off the boat, right? Is it raining? Get a shot of that water on the river. Think story when it comes to what B-roll to get. And the other thing is what pictures are going to tell the story, to prove the story. Picture it didn't happen, to prove the story that is happening to you right now, that is unfolding in front of you. I hope that helps. The other thing is that's really important. If something happens that you didn't capture, let's say your canoe dumps and and um and you didn't capture it, then you need to just take B-roll of everything around you and explain what's happening. Even if it's just the trees on the side, the canoe dumping, water dripping off of the back, I don't know, whatever, and then tell the story. And that's sort of the best way you can get B-roll just around you when you miss something. Uh, Jim, are you sponsored by Novacraft or do you have a preferred canoe brand? I've worked with Canoe. I'm not currently sponsored by Novacraft, but I worked with them for a lot of years. Absolutely, they were my go-to. At the end of the day, like a lot of manufacturers make pretty darn good canoes. Novacraft makes tough stuff, which is a seriously heavy-duty expedition worthy material, but they don't have the Royal X canoes anymore. But some other manufacturers, for example, Skeef makes T4 Max, way heavier than Tough Stuff or Tough Stuff Expedition. But it's a little bit bigger of a volume of a canoe in the bow and stern than the Tough Stuff one. So if you're going to be doing like a hardcore whitewater expedition where you're going to need to drag your canoe over boulders and stuff like that, I'd look for like an older Novacraft Royal X or a newer T4MX canoe. If you're going to be doing sort of minimum whitewater, let's say class twos, not necessarily beating the hell out of your boat. And of course, I've run tons of class threes in my Tough Stuff canoe. But if you're going to be going through shallow creeks and dragging and running up on bottom and stuff, you probably don't want to take a Tough Stuff canoe. I think you should really have both. But yeah, I'd say my favorite canoe in the world is my Tough Stuff, well, my Novacraft Royal X canoe. But I love well, first of all, I love my 18-foot Nova Tough Stuff Expedition, but I think my favorite is my Novacraft 15-foot Prospector in blue steel, because it's so light, yet the bottom of it can like take some serious lumps because it has an Negra and basalt layup on the bottom and it's injected with a flexible epoxy. The sides are pretty brittle. If you smoke a rock on the side, you can break it, but the bottom's strong and it's like a really light canoe. And it's beautiful. I have wood gunnels on it too. So yeah, I'm gonna still go with Novacraft, but I really wish that they would make a true Royal X replacement. What's your current solo pack canoe, or does it really matter? I don't. Yeah, I think it depends. Like I don't really run any super small like kind of pack canoe boats. So I just told you my 15-foot Novacraft Prospector in blue steel with wood gunnels. I have ash gunnels. Is definitely my favorite solo boat that I take on trips, even with some whitewater. Like I've done the Nipissing, I've run Allen's Rapids in it, run pretty much all the rapids on the Nipissing in it. So it's good, I would say, up to class twos, but not in low water conditions. And really low water conditions, it would get too banged up. Most important advice ever. Oh man, most important advice ever when it comes to being in the bush, or when it comes to anything. You know, uh, I don't know what the most important advice is ever. I don't know if I'm the best person to give that, but I think, yeah, I just think, believing in yourself. It's hard to, and not letting the world take away your confidence, is important. And I also think what's important as we navigate life is just not letting things like stress you out all the time. So what's been working for me is, I write down this big list. I used to write down a huge list and I try to get it all done in one day. This is a wish list. This is not a realistic list. So I have my master list. Then I think of three things I absolutely have to get done that day, and I write those down and I go bonkers on those things, and I cancel out all the other noise. I don't think of anything else. And it is like absolutely freeing because I'm like, oh my God, I have to do this. And how am I going to do this? And should I even be working on this now? Because maybe I should be working on the other thing now. Maybe I should prioritize that because this is taking longer than I thought. And then you get nothing done. And so, that's just a good, like getting stuff done overall, less stress, mental health tip. And the best, another way I can round that up. I used to think, oh, think positive thoughts for the future. When we got Wesley's diagnosis, one of the things that Tori and I learned through a therapy session we took to try to help us move past the grief that we felt because of Wesley's diagnosis was positive thoughts for the future equal power in the present. That applies to everything in life. And so I think these negative thoughts about Wesley in the future, and I just replace them with positive ones. That would give me the power to take care of him and to just feel good. Now I'm kind of realizing that just no thoughts are better. Like most of what you think is useless. Write down what you got to do, focus on those things, don't think about anything else. And, at the end of the day, the meaning to life is freaking, enjoying our time here on earth. Really, it's the best I have. So, there's the best advice. I don't know if that's in the realm of what you're talking about, but being an entrepreneur and a guy that puts himself in some pretty intense situations and has to plan for them back to back trips, that goes a long way for me. Okay. Hey, from Alabama. Love y'all so much. Thank you for your beautiful, loving family. Blessings to y'all in every way. XOXO. Well, thank you very much, Deborah. I really appreciate that. Venture Creek. Behind every great man is a great woman. Yeah, absolutely. Tori is awesome. Any more trips with Ted planned? Love watching the two of you guys together. Check out Ted's recent Manitoba trip. He took our entire 28-day plus adventure across much of northern Manitoba via the Barrington, up the Barrington, over the Haida Land, down the South Seal and Seal to Hudson Bay. He edited that all together. And on that trip, we actually traded footage. We didn't do that on the Hood River, which we kind of wish we did. We wish we got more footage of us communicating and talking. For one, the edit's a lot easier when you don't have double the footage. And also we thought, well, that would keep our videos different enough, so people would watch both from a different perspective. But really what Ted edited is just so exciting because it shows that conversation. You can see some of my videos are like that too, but Ted managed to condense this whole trip down into one film. And I think it was great. Yeah, I think the next trip me and Ted are doing is going to be a winter camping trip in northern Ontario, likely by snowmobile. Getting a new um, expedition, an E-Tech 850 expedition. So I'll have that and the Scandic. And we're going to go winter camp, explore some remote areas, try not to get stuck too bad, and try to smash some monster fish out there once it freezes up. So yeah, I'm going to do that with Ted and probably more too. Oh, and then in the spring, I'm going to do another collab trip like when me and Ted did the Dog River. Me and Ted are going to go do another whitewater river like that. Um, any more rivers, any more trips planned on the mighty rivers of British Columbia? What other rivers would I do, Mark, in British Columbia? Would you recommend? Obviously, something remote would be good, like is the Kicking Horse. I was just thinking about this. Is the Kicking Horse a good one? What about some ones with like potentially salmon? I don't know. Let me know. They can end in Alaska. That's fine. I want some ideas because yeah, I'd love to do another BC trip. Um, I loved your answer from the show alone. Learn how to suffer. Absolutely. Jim, have you ever considered guiding a group of us on a canoe trip? It would make a great video and would be super informative for some of us to learn how you plan a trip and make it all come together. Yeah, that would actually be a lot of fun. And it's actually an angle I've never thought of before because you're like, if I'm going to film it, I could kind of guide some people that are interested, some viewers of my channel, and take them along and just film it. But if I'm actually going to guide a trip and people are paying me and stuff, I'd need to buy like insurance, especially if we're doing whitewater and stuff like that. And then to make it worth it, if you're paying all this money insurance, you're going to have to guide multiple trips. And at the end of the day, it's like I might as well, and I actually do. I literally was the guy who essentially got my friends to do it, supplied them with gear, planned the routes, taught them how to run whitewater and all this kind of stuff. So I essentially enjoy it, introducing people to this kind of thing and stuff like that. But I just don't know if it would be the best use of my time to like, I'm already so busy, you can do anything you want to do, but you can't do everything you want to do. But I might consider it if it was sort of like an angle where people aren't paying me, they're coming along and I'm shooting a YouTube video. That could be pretty cool. Is there anyone you've ever wanted to just meet and have a long conversation with? It's famous or non-famous, and why? I mean, Farley Mowat, I know a lot of people have some bones to pick with him. He would have been an interesting guy. Gordon Lightfoot, I almost had the chance to talk with him again. He actually was a wilderness paddler. Um, yeah, a few people out there for sure. I can't give you a definitive answer, because unfortunately, a lot of my heroes are, the people I get inspiration from. A lot of the time, aren't alive anymore. They're all like the people who like lived in interior Labrador in the 1930s and this kind of thing. You know what I mean? So yeah, good question. I don't know. Wayne Gretzky. Can't go wrong with saying Wayne Gretzky. Um, alone and suffering. Uh, discomfort. It's not all bad, eh? Type 2 fun. Good if your body is okay, I think. Absolutely. Nexus Ramsey, thanks for the comment. Thank you. Your videos are awesome. Awesome storytelling. National Geographic worthy. Much experience. Much appreciated, man. Actually, I learned a lot from our show with Nat Geo, and just that's if you notice, ever since I did the Nat Geo show, I started busting out the drone way more. To just instead of I used to fly it for a long time, show this long drone sequence, and then I wouldn't fly it for the next day or two. Now I try to bust it out like at the end of every scene. Not quite, but I'd love to see you and your family go rentals, really high end ice shanties that has the built-in kitchen and bathroom and all nice stuff. You need to spend a weekend. That would be a lot of fun. Yeah. Well, thanks. People are interested that they'd be interested to come along with a trip. That's pretty cool. First winter camping trip ever this weekend. Any tips? Are you bringing a canvas tent with a wood stove, or are you cold tenting? Like, are you just sleeping in a regular tent with a winter sleeping bag? I would say hot tent. Okay. How good are you with being able to tell the difference between wood and hardwood, standing dead hardwood and softwood? If you're going to be pretty far in northern Ontario, you can't really find much hardwood, but I'd say that being able to find some nice hardwood, usually it's sort of lumpier and smoother, doesn't have a bunch of sticks sticking out of the side of it. And you can always tell with some of the bark starting to fall off, it's going to be drier. But I'd say, take the time to buy to find some good hardwood is a good tip, and really bring a really good ground pad that's going to keep you off the snow, keep you sort of off the ground a lot so you could be warm. But I think the best tip is, if you're going to keep the stove running all night, I ideally let the stove die down. I have some kindling there. I relight it first thing in the morning. I get better sleeps that way. But if you plan on somebody keeping the stove running all night, sleep near the stove with your sleeping bag off your shoulders. And that way, when you wake up, you're going to wake up from the cold and you can stoke the fire. And that way, the fire won't be dead. If you have your sleeping bag bundled all the way around you, by the time you wake up from the cold, the fire will be completely burnt down and you'll have to relight it with kindling a bunch of times through the night and you'll get a terrible sleep and will be groggy the next morning. So, yeah, keep your wood right there at fire at arm's reach, sleeping bag off your shoulders, wake up, toss a couple pieces in, go back to sleep right away. I think that's pretty much a darn good tip. If it's your first time winter camping, you're probably planning on running the stove all night. Is your wood saw holding up and keeping a good sharp edge? I've been using like the Agawa saws. I don't really I don't really have like uh I just basically run the blades till they're dull and then just like slap a new one on. Like I've bought in replacement blades. So yeah, I essentially it is. I get a pretty good amount of life out of them, but I'm not sharpening them. Where and how did you meet Tori? Tori used to work for State Farm, which is now Desjardins, and my cousin works there still. And it turns out they work together, and then my cousin actually, Tori lives across the street more or less from my cousin. And so my cousin was dating a girl that worked at State Farm, and that girl just happened to be friends with Tori. So we all met up, and there wasn't like a hookup or anything, but we all met up at like a bar in like Newmarket, Ontario. Brad brought his girlfriend, and she brought a friend, and we all chatted and I said some stuff that made me sound smart and funny, believe it or not. And yeah, the rest is history. A friend is using making a canvas tent and using all rivets, no machine stitching. Will rivets keep the tent and moisture out? It depends if he's depends on how he's overlapping the material. Like stitching is probably better, but I think that like and rivets are going to be heavier. But if he's like the main area where you're going to have to stitch is like at the edge where the roof meets the walls. As long as that piece of roof material goes over top of the piece of wall material, the water will shed off of it. But if the material is the other way around, water would get in. So I think it's as long as you're kind of putting the pieces of material together like you would shingles. Thanks for the great live shows. Much love to you and the family. Much appreciated. Um, hey, Jim, love your videos. My 12-year-old daughter loves you too and always asks if we can watch another boat guy video. That's awesome. We're looking forward to seeing a Yukon trip with you and Huddy someday. Amazing. Uh, Why an Expedition 850? Someone's asking. Honestly, I would rather have the Expedition 900 Ace and even a 900 Ace Turbo, but that's what I could get my hands on. I want the Expedition. It handles better. It's more stable. The Scandic can get pretty tippy. I love the Pogo suspension, but I just think I want to try something a little different that's also good at hauling, and I think the Expedition will be better for Tori to ride as well. And I wanted to try one out. So yeah, so and I want a sled that's a good utility sled that can haul heavy stuff, that's good in deep snow, and that kind of stuff. That's similar to the Scandic but more stable, and that's what I'm going with. If I had my first choice, it wouldn't be an E-Tech 850; it'd be a 900 Ace Turbo all freaking day though. Newmarket represent. There's a big State Farm office in Aurora. That's right. Yeah, the State Farm office in Aurora. It's now Desjardins. That's where they worked. Are you better fisherman than Xander? I don't know. Sometimes I think Xander's he got JC on his side out there because he freaking managed to land some tanks. But yeah, he's got some good luck and And but yeah, I definitely have more experience fishing than Xander does, you know. I mean, he's better looking, funnier, younger, and in better shape than me, though. But I'm still a better fisherman than him, so you know, who cares? Anyways, yeah. On that note, I think I'm gonna wrap it up, man. This went by so fast. It's been really great. Just having a chance to connect with everybody here a bit. I feel like everybody kind of gets the chance to know me from watching my, but I never get the chance to meet or know anybody. So yeah, yeah, I'm just reading here. It's like I'm glad my family adventures remind you of your own. That's awesome. I'll stay safe on the ice. Absolutely. It's not safe yet. Hopefully it warms up a bit here. And so, because that what happened around here is the ice froze like thin, and then we got a huge snow dumping, which is like the worst. So I'm hoping it actually warms up a bit, and some of that snow on the ice melts down a bit, and then we get a really hard freeze. Because with that insulating layer of snow, it doesn't allow the cold to get down to the ice. So when you get a big, heavy snowfall on top of thin ice, the ice can be crappy for the year. For BC, I would recommend between Terrace and Watson Lake. I know you've done the mighty Stikine, but Dease River is on my bucket list. I've heard the Dease River is good. I heard there's another one up there too. There's like a mine along it, but I heard the fishing is amazing. Maybe it's a Dease. You just reminded me of something. Um, have you ever canoed the Seguin River east of Orville? Lots of Crown lakes up there. Is that the one that goes right through Perry Sound? I think me and Tori did it, but it was too late in the year, and it was really shallow, and we wish we pulled it, but it was still super fun and beautiful. But yeah, it's a spring run. There's a really cool canyon on it. Yeah, I did get out deer hunting in Ontario for about a week this year, and I actually putting a video up on that as well. So I should release my own whiskey. That would be awesome. Uh, you guys did great going west from Orville. Thanks. What's the average cost of a canoe trip while accessing the river by float plane? Pretty freaking expensive. Like I did the one I did in the Yukon. The flight wasn't horrifically far, and I could take a Cessna 206, which isn't as expensive as taking a de Havilland Beaver. That was $2,500 for the float plane charter. Then you're looking at about $800 for return flights from Whitehorse, and then you're looking at the canoe rental, which is probably like $35 a day or something like that. Um, so that all adds up. The way I do things is I try, like for example, like I paid just outright for my float plane and and my commercial flights on that trip, but I got Up North Adventures to help me out with the canoe rental costs, and I promoted them. So I'm always trying to find ways to sort of, because it's my business, to try to reduce the cost of my trips because they're already like so expensive. And not to mention my video editing. Like just my video right now on the Yukon down the Wolf River, that cost me $7,500 to edit just for that. 2,500 for the float plane, 800 for the ride there or for the flight there. All my baggage fees are like $400. Like then my food I'm buying, then you know, if I want to take a cab or eat dinner in town, like we're very quickly with everything because of my video editing, you're like well over 10 grand. But you know, I think there's definitely some fly-in trips you can do very comfortably for 5 grand for sure. Like you could go do that Wolf River one for, you know, for 4 grand easily, 20, you know, 35, 4 grand. You know, and it seems like a lot of money, and it really is. But you never regret it. Like me and Ted, it took me, I couldn't, when I ran up a $30,000 debt on my credit card, you know, I paddled the Kuju, I put 7,000, put the whole trip on my credit card. That was 2008. Okay. I didn't pay off my card until I won a loan. Okay. And so I'm not recommending this. I didn't pay off my card till I won a loan in like 2017. So I'm just saying I never regretted it at all. So when, like if you spend money on these things, you don't regret spending money on experiences. Everyone says that. Couldn't agree more. All right. Well, on that note, I think I'm going to shut her down, everybody. Thank you so much for joining. It's been a blast. I wasn't sure if anybody would want to hear this kind of story of my path, but I hope you got something out of it, learned something from it, and everybody enjoy the outdoors, and hope you all have some adventures planned for yourselves in the coming days or weeks or months or year or whatever. But it's never too early to start planning. All right. Have a good one.